Dear Paal Nilsson-Love, thank you very much for joining this moment to have a nice talk here on the ZomerJazzFietsTour. For sure, it's not the first time that you played here, right? What is your experience so far with this festival?
But I think it's the fourth or fifth time I'm playing here. First time was in 2002 with Cord, Fuhler and Tobias Delius. So I guess, I've played here about 4 or 5 times. Always enjoyed it, especially the social aspect of it at the main quarters, as they call it, with the food and drinks, and a lot of musicians that I know, friends, get together and share some good times. Mm-hmm. But as I said, I wish, because it's always happening at the same time as Mulhouse, Meteo, another festival. So you end up just flying in, doing a concert, and then out again. But I like it.
You like it?
Yeah, and it's a funny idea of people riding their bicycles from venue to venue or church to church.
Well, you're also organizing your own festival in Oslo, I think.
Yeah, I was doing All Is Festival in January for about 12 or 13 years. I left that, and some other people are continuing the programming of that festival, and then there's another one called Blowout, which is in August, which now actually reached its 10th year. So I see the importance of, what should I say, putting on shows as well, presenting music. I want to hear music that I want other people to hear.
Mm-hmm. And did you still steal some ideas from this festival to realize your own one?
No, and that's probably because there was never any time to hear other concerts here. So I've learned that for sure, traveling to different festivals. If there's a good program, try to stay another day or two and check out musicians I don't know, musicians I've heard of. And then, of course, in the end, maybe I'll then present them in Oslo.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, you are a fascinating drummer. You're very, very busy. I think from 365 days you are busy at least 200.
Yeah, it feels like.
So that's a lot, I think.
Yeah.
And well, you played with The Thing. I think you're the drummer of The Thing.
Yeah.
But you also performed with artists like Jim O'Rourke.
Yeah.
And Peter Brötzmann and the Chicago Tentet.
That's right. That's right.
Also the X, I think.
If not with the X, but at least with Terrie and Andy of the X. And no, I actually did play with the X when we were in Ethiopia together, and Cut wasn't there, so I ended up doing a few tunes with the X, which was fun.
And you will come back to Groningen in 2 weeks, I think, with the X.
Yeah, you're right.
The festival.
Yeah.
And you also played with Joe McPhee.
Yeah, quite a bit.
Yeah, and Arto Lindsay.
That's true.
And you have your own big band. It's called the Large Unit.
Yeah.
And you also played with Ken Vandermark a lot.
Yeah.
So these are all very different artists. You have to be very flexible to collaborate, right?
Kind of. I mean, they are all very strong players that shape the music that we do together. Hopefully I manage to contribute a little bit as well. So the music goes in different directions for them as well. But for sure, all collaborations with the musicians that you mentioned are important for me. Plus, a Norwegian saxophone player who you didn't mention, Frode Gjerstad, whom I've played with for about 25 years maybe. So there's a lot of different... I like having, what should I say, regular collaborations.
Yeah,
bands.
But if you don't have regular collaborations, still you have to be very flexible, right? How do you do that?
Yeah, I mean, I think with the different guys I play with, the different bands I play with, we're all conscious about what our sound is, kind of, and maybe where it can go. We also like to go places we didn't know of musically. But let's say I was to do back-to-back tours or several gigs in a row with different bands, for sure I've got to be conscious about the different sound of the different groups. so that I'm not just playing, it doesn't matter what I'm playing, or I'm just playing the same thing over and over again with whoever. But I think that's to do about you as a musician being humble, receiving the ideas of the other players and developing them together.
Yeah. Are you a more intuitive player, or do you also work functioning from the idea of a concept?
I mean, with Ken and I, we've done so many gigs together as a duo for so many years. I think we released 10 albums together. And we know that we have a sound, which is very special for that duo, but of course we try and push the music of the duo the way each of us play, and ourselves and the other person very much so, and see where we can go, because there's still, we feel there's a lot of possibilities and areas that we haven't covered yet.
Okay. Well, can you tell me how it is for you, the first moment, the first moment before you start playing?
Yeah.
How is that?
No, I mean, okay, with some of the groups, we might be talking about how to start off the concert, but of course, when we're on stage, that's 5 minutes later or an hour later, so completely different situation. Then usually we'll end up doing the opposite. But I always think of it as when you're diving into water, which usually is a little bit colder than you expect, and you're standing on the diving board, ready to dive, you know you're going to dive into the water, seems crazy, and there's something that kicks you or pushes you. No one is pushing you literally, but something. And then when you're on your way into the water, it's already too late. And for me, that's how a gig starts, I would say. And then you try to swim as the best as you can.
Yeah.
And then, I mean, it's like with music, you set off, and as soon as you feel there's an idea, then work on that.
But there's no something like that you have just to stop thinking without doing anything, just focus on the silence before you jump into it.
I mean, I like playing with, let's say, Terrie X. You walk on stage and within a second he's making sound almost by chance, and the music kicks off, whilst other bands sometimes tendency of waiting a little bit too long before you go into the music. That silence can be beautiful too, but I like when things get going, and I think it's good when you set a certain level of energy right away. And for sure, I mean, preparations before concert, the last thing you should do is reading or doing email or checking your telephone, because you never know, sometimes there might be a message you don't want to read or you wish you didn't read, and then that can kind of disturb your focus for the music.
Okay. Well, you mentioned it just earlier, you traveled to Ethiopia.
Right.
But several times already.
Yeah.
And you traveled also to Brazil, where you met Arthur Lindsay for sure.
Yeah.
What did you learn there in these countries?
Ooh.
For you? What was your experience also to enrich your instruments maybe and your compositions?
Right. Oh God.
Maybe it's too much.
No. I mean, it's first time I went to Ethiopia is maybe 10 years ago, I think. It must be with Terrie, Andy, Terry's wife Emma, and Ken and Abaris, and a saxophone repair guy, Frizu. And that was an absolute life-changing experience, going to Ethiopia for the first time. Meeting so many people, musicians, dancers, singers, so generous people. Hospitality, I mean, they give so much of themselves, and you feel so welcome. And I think the strongest musical experiences for me as a listener was happening in Ethiopia, especially being at the school for blind musicians. That was, I still remember that very clearly. And going to the Asmari bets, we had traditional music, all of a sudden there was the electricity went out. And within 5 minutes there was candles on the table and the music continued and the dancing. Absolute, so strong experiences. And then, I decided, okay, I've got to go back as often as possible. To learn more about the music, the culture, experience more. And in the end I was lucky or fortunate enough to be able to invite a lot of them up to Oslo for an evening, organising music from Ethiopia, and then had the X. Ken and Mats flew in as well. And I think for me then, when the first time I went to Brazil, the same feeling of just hearing a lot of music you've never heard before, meeting a lot of people, establishing very close friendships right away, and wanting to come back as often as possible. So I've tried to maintain that with both Ethiopia and Brazil. And Ken was saying at one point after a gig that it was nice to hear how I was using some rhythms that he had heard in Ethiopian music. And I wasn't aware of that I was playing rhythms that you could, trace back to Ethiopian music. And the same thing happens with the Brazilian music, that it's affecting me, as a person, musician, whatnot. And all of a sudden, for whatever reason, in that one moment, there's a lot of rhythms from these two different countries. And it's not like I walk on stage and thinking, okay, I'm going to play a little bit of that rhythm and a little bit of that, sort of picking, choosing, like as if it was a jacket that you put on. You've got to let the body or the mind or the heart to decide itself when these kind of rhythms or is to come out in your own playing.
How did it go to mix all these rhythms?
I don't know, because I mean they just happen. I mean it's like you're on stage improvising. Just before you're going to play, something triggers you, sets off a spark. If I'm playing with so and so, she sets off a spark, and then all of a sudden you're playing some rhythm that sounds like or has got traces of Brazilian music, if it's northeastern Brazilian or samba or whatever it is, forró, by chance. Whenever it feels right, then I do it, but very often without being so conscious about it.
Yeah.
Because I try to sort of, or at least I think the music that we do is quite spontaneous.
What do you like about these rhythms that you experience there?
I mean, they move your body in a different way. You feel different body movements out of the different rhythms, I would say. Mm-hmm. Also, one thing about the two countries is that so many people, musicians or not, know so much about their own music. It's a big part of them. They all know all the most known songs by heart. They're very proud of their own music. They're also proud of the good sides or parts of their culture, their food and everything. And there's a great knowledge amongst people about their own heritage. So that's also very special for both Ethiopia and Brazil, I feel.
And is it easy to learn, or is it
the music
difficult to learn these kind of rhythms?
The exact rhythms can be sometimes really difficult. With you have the Tigrinya, which is a very odd meter-based beat from Eritrea, northern Ethiopia as well. I struggled to learn that because it's a very, very offbeat rhythm, so to say. And there's some of the rhythms in Brazilian music as well, performed on either pandeiro or tamborim or the different percussion instruments, and sometimes I feel quite useless when trying. But then maybe I'll translate them into my own language and perform those rhythms on a different percussion instrument, orchestrate them differently to whatever feels right for me there and then. So I'm deliberately trying to not copy specific rhythms, but let it just happen when it has to happen.
And they become your own rhythm.
Kind of, yeah. It becomes a part of my language as well.
Yeah. Can you, in general, tell me what is your rhythm? What is your language?
Oh God.
What is Paal Nilsson-Love's language?
I do not know. I mean, you've got to tell me. I mean, I just play the way I do, and fortunately or thankfully, it changes through the years and develops. And if I don't know, for whatever reason, but I listened back to some old recordings 5, 10, 15, 20 years ago, recorded back then I'll hear different things in my playing, and I think, wow, okay. And then I would try to replicate that, which is impossible today. I mean, I'm a different person than I was 20 years ago, a different player. But one thing, if I have the chance to practice the drums, I like to play the drums and make some music on the drums. Of course, if I have the time, I'll go and practice and just practice rudiments and stamina and keep that going. But yeah, I think it's the most important is to whenever you're in contact with your instrument, to then create music. And one thing is, you could say, play. There's a difference of playing rhythms and playing with rhythms, for example. And I think it's much more fun to play with rhythms. I mean, shuffle them around and see what happens.
Okay.
And force myself to play ways that I haven't played before. Ways of playing that are maybe feels difficult because of whatever coordination of the body and your four limbs that you haven't done before. Yeah, it's like trying to walk, trying to do a funny walk.
Okay.
And then see what happens. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, your parents had a jazz club.
Yeah, that's right.
And since very early times, you are playing drums.
Yeah, I mean, I would almost say that I started playing drums. What should I say? 9 months before I was born, because my dad played drums before me. He still plays every now and then, but I mean, I'm still using his old George Hayman drum kit. Who's now focusing 100% on visual arts. So he was basically practicing the drums in their bedroom when I was still not born. And the drum kit was standing there every day, so I would play them from time to time. I was going to play trumpet when I joined the school band at the age of, what would that be, 9? And when the conductor asks me, I say drums instead of trumpet, to my parents' surprise, but I think also joy. But yeah, they were running a jazz club, very important, very great jazz club in Stavanger, from I was 5 till I was, 9 or so. So I was exposed to a lot of music, great music, Art Blakey, Tony Oxley, John Stevens, Steve McCall, I think Philip Wilson as well, maybe was there. Never got to hear Elvin Jones at the club, but Art Blakey was there several times, and he came back to our house afterwards. So growing up with that, I do realise and I do feel extremely privileged when you meet people that have grown up with no musical environment around them. And you wonder, it's also fascinating, why did they choose music? But of course, for me, very natural to choose music.
Yeah. Can you tell me a little bit more about your experience with Art Blakey, maybe, and what you like about his way of organizing a rhythm, sound, and vibration? Yeah,
I mean, he's fascinating, and he is not to be forgotten. The way that he ran all these different groups. I mean, he was a teacher for so many musicians that might have made it after or not, but he was, what should I say, he was passionate about music. He didn't care about generations. He played with younger people, he taught them, took them on the road. Extremely dedicated musician, for sure. And his playing as well. I mean, he could move a ship with his playing. He was pushing the band all the time. And I remember as a kid enjoying, what shall I say, that kind of jazz, improvised music, whatever we're going to call it, more than so-called insect music, as Kent Carter would call what he did with John Stevens and Derek Bailey and whatnot. Maybe I found that music more fascinating when I got older. I remember hearing a show in London with Derek Bailey, Paul Rodgers, and then I was fascinated by that music. But when I was 5, 6, 7, 8 years old, I loved Art Blakey and the Jazz Messengers. And what was it, 7 or 8 years old, he wanted me to come up on stage and play, which I was too scared of. But he gave me his drumsticks, which I cracked the next day when wanting to practice them. Of course, if he was alive today and he gave me his sticks, I would frame them. But back then, of course, I'm going to play them, and I cracked them. They are there to be used.
Yeah.
But and he recognised us when we saw him some years later in Molde. And he was sort of, yeah, where's my boys? Standing there giving us a big hug. So he was absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I must say.
Yeah. Can you please describe your equipment, your set, your drum set, your percussion set, special items, maybe cymbals?
Sure, I mean, up until let's say I was 24 or so, I was touring with my own kit, the old Joe Chairman of my dad's, with a lot of extra percussion added to it. Bongo drums, cowbells, a lot of small various cymbals. So it was about 80 kilos of equipment.
Wow.
But then we knew a guy working for the airline. He gave us tickets where we could take 80 kilos of equipment. Now, of course, that's changed completely. So I end up using whatever I'm given. I prefer them to sort of have some nice, new drum heads and whatnot, and certain sizes. But I still bring, I take, 28 kilos with me. My own throne, so that I know at least I'm sitting on the same height every night, and the same kind of chair. Snare drum, cowbell, some small Chinese cymbals, whatnot, and always the cymbal bag of 22 kilos of large cymbals, which are usually the same whatever band I'm playing with. Mm-hmm. But and they're a part of my sound. They're the sounds that I like to bring with me. But of course, not of course, but for me, I enjoy using new drum kits here and there, sometimes in very bad condition, but there's always something to pull out of them. And they also, to a certain extent, change the way that you play, or they at least colour the way that you play. If it's a dampened bass drum, or it's in a... But the same goes with the room that you're playing in. The acoustics affects the music of the band that you're playing with, the way you play the drums, or have to play the drums, because you've got to deal with the room. And you can play with the room, against the room. Sometimes the room affects the music a little bit too much. You can't do whatever you prefer to do, but okay, there's a quality in that as well.
Can you explain a little bit playing against the room or with the room?
Yeah, I mean, let's say playing with the room, I mean with the acoustics, let's say there's a long delay. Okay, you can use that, but also that will colour the music, and there's certain things you can't do. Let's say it wouldn't be natural to play so dense or loud, for example. Then it might be more interesting to play quiet, or at least try to, if you can manage that. Mm-hmm. But yeah, it's like every day affects the way you're playing. Every room's going to affect the way you're playing, and the same goes for the instrument.
Yeah.
And you can't walk off stage saying you had a bad gig or you thought the music was bad, or whatever didn't work because the instrument you were given that night. I mean, it's up to you to make that thing work. There's always going to be something that you can pull out of it.
Yeah. How do you tune your set?
The drum's usually very low. That's why I also prefer if they can provide with relatively new drum heads. But quite low, all the way down, and then just tighten them enough. Yeah.
Okay, what kind of sticks do you use?
Vic Firth, what do they call SD2 Bolero, which I bought just by chance maybe 15 years ago because I wanted to practice just drum rolling. And it turns out they were really nice sticks to use in any connection. And I've noticed there's quite a lot of drummers using these sticks. You find them anywhere, quite thick, but there's nice sound in them as well. And feel, and yeah, those are the ones that I've used the last 15 or whatnot years.
Yeah, I saw in a recent video that you also use a Conga drum and some shakers.
Yeah, I mean the Conga was just by chance when we did a tour with David Murray and Ingeborg and I, and for some reason, some of those tunes I heard the sound of just one Conga drum. So I included that where that was possible. The shakers I bought in Brazil. They become a part of the instrument. Sometimes I use them as if they were a cymbal. Instead of the ride cymbal, I'll use the shakers. Mm-hmm. And for me, including all these different percussion instruments, you widen, you broaden your sound in a way.
Yeah.
And it's fun for me to use, what should I say, the Brazilian shakers in a completely different way than a Brazilian percussionist would in a samba band, for example.
Because you are an improviser, right?
Sure.
And so that means, in a way, you are also leaving the normal trails for drums and the situation how people play normally a drum set.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, in a way, as a drummer, you're extremely privileged because you can, if you want, include absolutely anything and turn it into a percussion instrument. But at the same time, you're fucked because you can easily do that too much and lose yourself completely. So it's good to every now and then do a gig without any of the bits and pieces that you're used to having. And just see, okay, well, you're in a tricky situation without your own instrument, maybe even without your own sticks. I mean, I've got a lot of different kind of sticks, of bamboo or the regular Vic Firth mallet, 3 or 4 different kinds of mallets, brushes, plastic and metal and whatnot. They all produce different sounds.
And maybe you with your fingers.
That as well, yeah, of course. But it's like, it's good to every now and then leave all that and see what you can do. Or what do you do? Who are you? I mean, as this so-called improviser you regard yourself as.
Well, Mats Gustafsson said about you, you are an unstoppable train of energy. So my question is, where does all this energy in you come from? From
the music. I mean, from experiencing so much amazing people, audience. I'm not doing the gigs hoping for people to applaud. That's not why I'm doing what I'm doing. It gives energy. People give energy. The music gives energy. The people that I play with, and I mean, okay, I'm not the one who goes to bed the first, but and that's also, I like being with people and experiencing and maybe extending the feel of the concert into, I don't know what, sometimes it turns into parties, sometimes not, but for sure I want to take in as much as possible when I'm on the road. Meet all the people that are there, hang out, eat the local food, drink the local drink. And yeah, it would be great to have more time to be able to say, no, I'm going to stay a few extra days instead of going to the next trip or next tour. So I mean, there's plenty of musicians who the only thing they see is the hotel, the car, whatever transportation means, and the hotel and the venue, and then back again. And let's say there was a concert many years ago, big concert house, a lot of money in this venue obviously, and as soon as the concert was done, the curtains closed. And they didn't let us out on stage again to practice the instruments until the audience had left. And I said, yeah, but I want to meet. There's people in the audience I want to meet. And then I realised now I can't see them because the curtain is closed. So there's so much more to than just the actual music that I enjoy about touring. And I would say that gives me quite a lot of energy.
Yeah.
And going to Ethiopia, going to Brazil, going to Japan or Okinawa in Japan as well, hearing new kinds of music, meeting new people. Yeah, all of that is worth living for.
It's beautiful that you say that a concert is not ending when you stop playing.
No.
I mean, it's really beautiful that you include everything inside the whole act.
Yeah, I mean, it's so okay, when this music has stopped, yeah, of course if the sound engineer puts on some random record, okay, he's ruined whatever just happened, and I like to feel whatever happened a little bit longer, for sure, because there is something special in the air, some certain energy that you share with the band, but also with the audience.
Yeah,
that linger.
Yeah. That brings me to the question I also have on another paper here.
Sure.
It's the idea of recording. You know, is a recording finished when you finish the recording in the studio, or do the mixing, or is it finished somehow when you know it's in the store, or is it finished when you know now people start listening to it?
Right. Or is it finished when people stop listening to it?
And throw it out of the window.
Okay, recording in the studio, which we do quite seldom, because of the financial side to it. I mean, it's expensive. Timing of it. I mean, there's not always the chance of setting off 2 or 3 days for recording. You've got to mix and master. But I mean, okay, let's say there is money to do it. It is quite an interesting situation, because you're dealing with music in a completely different way. There's no audience there. Who are you performing for? Can you do it better tomorrow? Or was it as good as it was there and then? I prefer the latter. So no, that was as good as it's going to be today. If it's tunes or if it's improvised music, completely improvised.
So it's also a different approach how to record something than just going to the studio and play some tunes and
let's say it's a band with tunes, and then that sure didn't work now, let's try it again. A rock band, sometimes they play the same piece over again for 2 weeks, over and over again for 2 weeks. Let's say with the thing, we went in the studio the last couple of times with a producer, a musician that we know, and that was nice actually, because he would tell us what to do. Because of course, jazz musicians, being a little bit too polite, don't want to suggest too many things to the other player, more encourage, to say whatever you wanted to hear from the other player. So it was good for us to have a fourth person telling us what to do, how to do it. But I think then the process of mixing I find interesting. You're listening to the music in a completely different way. You're listening to the balance, the sounds of the instruments, how they work together or not. And then of course composing the album of whatever music material you've recorded. How do you put it together? Because then you can create a different story again. And then again you're in the mastering situation. What do you want to boost? How do you want it to sound? Do you want it to sound as if it was in a live situation? Why would you want to do that if you recorded in the studio? And then of course also with it's a product. It's going to become a product with hopefully a cover. What is that going to look like? Liner notes or not, credits. It's all one long process what shall I say? It's going to be there for the rest of your life. So you should be sure to make it a good one. And when somebody says, "Oh well, by mistake there was some delay on whatever instrument," and then the person says, "Well, that's not my problem." Well, it is actually your problem because it's your fault not participating in the mixing process. Let's say that happened. But also when live gigs are recorded and you listen back, remembering it was a really good gig, or you are surprised you didn't think it was that great, but then whilst you're listening to it maybe 2 months later, okay, that was actually some good music, something different happened. And then you choose to release it. It's a documentation of the band where it was there and then. Sometimes it's worth to do such things. Also, you need you use it as a business card or to promote the band, that as well. But it should stand out as something special, I think, because there's way too many recordings, way too many albums being put out.
Yeah. You are also having your own label, right?
That as well, yeah.
Yeah, and I read that sometimes you record something, you publish CDs, but no one is buying them.
Well, it's
what's
strange.
About them?
It's strange. I mean, okay, I wish I had the money to be able to upfront to produce vinyl, because that's a little bit expensive and it takes quite a lot of time before you regain the expenses. It's a longer process of releasing vinyl albums on vinyl. So mostly I'm doing CDs, which I really don't mind. I mean, it's easy to travel with. Some fans expect you to lug vinyl on the road, and then on top of that they expect to get a discount when they're buying 3 or 4 LPs, but actually you're actually also paying for me to take them on the plane, risk paying excess luggage or overweight, etc, etc. But it was basically a label that was putting out a lot of music with me. We were talking about doing how was it? Things got a little bit out of control. I learned that if I began releasing the music myself, then I would be in full control. If there was a mistake, if it was delayed, then it was my fault. I didn't have to waste my energy on somebody who didn't do his job. And it was fun, and I'm only releasing music that I'm on, stuff that I know other labels wouldn't release maybe. And some CDs or LPs or some of the albums sell, some don't. The ones that sell obviously pay for the one that didn't.
Yeah, I think some years ago you recorded an album with Nena Cherry.
Right.
With the Sing.
Yeah.
Can you tell me a little bit about the process and why you decided to work together?
Well, I mean, it was actually a suggestion of a close friend of Mats, Connie Lindström, who was also part of the label called Crazy Wisdom, which was a sub-label of Universal, that then produced the 2 first CDs with The Thing. And I think Connie Lindström was part of taking the initiative of getting the 3 of us together. Mats had heard Ingebrigt and I, and the first record was done Cherry Pieces, and on the second as well, I think, a few. And then after 10-15 years, Connie or Mats, I can't remember who, suggested, well, what about doing something with Nena Cherry, the stepdaughter of Don Cherry. Up until then, we had done a lot of, projects, also tours with guests like Joe, of course, Jim O'Rourke, Otomo Yoshihide, Thurston Moore, Ken, not least. And why not do something with vocal? She hadn't been so active the years before this. And we got together and it worked really well from the first time we met. It was really fun for us to play pieces, for us to have a vocalist, a strong singer in the band, and going on quite a crazy or intense tour of 25 gigs in 30 days or something like that. Wow. It was intense, and I mean, also having a singer, one in front of the band, who is really, I would say, in control of the audience and the situation. The singer, in this case, Nena, extremely strong, and kicking us every single night, despite the fact that we had slept maybe 2 or 1 hour the last 3 nights. Traveling was crazy, and yeah, I mean, it was a lot of fun. I'm glad we did it. We learnt quite a bit of the ins and outs of the pop industry, so to say. Although, I mean, it was a different situation for us. Yeah.
Yeah. Different than normal you have when you improvise.
Yeah, I mean, everything around it was different. But we learnt a lot. I learnt very much from that process.
Yeah. I want to come back to the moment when you play, when you act, when you drum during a performance. Can you tell me, are you always there then? Or do you leave maybe the situation? Are you going somewhere else?
Oh.
Do you leave your body or are you in love then?
Yeah. La. I mean, sometimes you can lose yourself, you don't know where you are. You're in the music sends you off into spaces you've never experienced before. Out of the body experiences, okay, that has happened a long time ago, but it does do something to you as a person, spiritually for sure. Where you, and in a way you're not entitled, you call yourself a musician or improviser or whatever, to sort of control the music. I like the fact, or when the music controls you in a way, sends you off into different areas, and you're just feeding whatever the fire is demanding. So it's about being semi-conscious of the situation. Don't feel that you can control it. Yeah. Because you can take the music to certain places, but the music for sure can take you as a performer to certain places, which it, of course, for the listener, hopefully it does. But it's about being humble to yourself, your musical partners, and the music itself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, as an improviser, I understand that you are always searching for new areas, for new ways to do what you do.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say there's one rule in a way that if you haven't experienced something new, it doesn't have to be much, from yourself, the other players, and whatever happened in between you and the other players, then it's time to move on, or what should I say, quit the band, fire some of the members, or really have a discussion about what we're doing. And there has to be something new happening almost every day. Because I mean, music is not something you do out of routine. If it turns into that, then for sure you've got to shake it up again. And every day is different. How can you walk on stage playing the exact same shit as last night? Some people think, let's do the same set list every night. And what should I say? As if you're sort of perfectionist, but no, it's got to be. You've got to shake things up much more.
Yeah. How do you live the rest of your life? Is it also like that?
No, I mean, I'm working too much with paperwork, administration. That is about to kill me. So I've got to be a little bit conscious about that. Delayed taxes, delayed reports, accounts, applications. I mean, okay, one has to be grateful. One is extremely fortunate with an address in Norway, born in Norway, I'm still English. The fact that I can apply for funding for tours going all over around the world. Well, can't complain about that, but it is a lot of paperwork to be dealt with after whatever tour has happened. And also the situation now when you do a gig, you set the fee, you as a musician, you've got to do so much more now than, let's say, 15 years ago, related to flight book, if you're booking the gig yourself, that is, and haven't got an agent. Booking the flights early enough so that you're not losing too much of the fee. In Norway, you've got to send the accounts to the tax man. He sends you an invoice of the 15% of the foreign musician tax. You've got to go in online and fill in all the tunes for the GEMA. And I mean, it's you're adding maybe 2 hours of paperwork to every hour of music you've performed. And that's not the way it should be. So for some of the groups, I'm grateful that we have an agent. I like to book myself and stay in touch with the presenters and whatnot, and manage to produce a tour can be quite stimulating. But it demands a lot of work and a lot of hours in front of that bloody computer. So it's nice for me, and I've learned now to just shut that machine. Maybe one day or two even, but that's extremely difficult. And people expecting you to answer or reply right away as well.
Yeah. Well, you are so much involved in music, in drama, in the way you work with sound, with vibrations. Can you tell me what, in general, you think is music, and why is it so important we have it, and why does it connect people so much, and why do we want it so much? Because it's increasing. I mean, all these festivals, all these concerts everywhere.
Yeah. No,
so
but
what's going on with this thing called music?
No, but it is something that we do together. It's okay to talk about musicians who go to, let's say, what's it called, Berklee School of Music in Boston, and they're standing there practicing 8 hours a day by themselves. They don't go to see any shows with live music, not learning from that, not learning from experience through playing with other musicians. And then music becomes a solitary thing. And for me, music is the opposite. And it's something that brings people together. You share that moment together, which can be very special. And I think people travel to wherever the show is happening, to festivals, celebrating music, life and love and whatnot. If you go to a nightclub, you see how people are dancing to certain kinds of music. It gets them going. I mean, it's important to feel what that is about. And when you, let's say you go to a museum, and there was once when one of the guards there, he said he didn't have the ability to appreciate modern art. And you could find that amongst the person on the street. No, he hasn't got the ability to appreciate music. But just go and let it happen and see if it can affect you. People like different kinds of music. That's also great. People have taste or maybe not. There's a lot to discover. But with music, it's something that you share with others very often. Yeah. Thankfully.
What was your last visited concert you just visited for fun?
I stayed an extra day in Antwerp, a festival called Zomer, run by Koen and Crystal. Just because the program's really good, people that I wanted to check out, that I hadn't heard, and there was a lot of friends going there. But I must say, a quartet with the Danish saxophone player called Signe Emmerud was absolutely amazing. So good. Quartet that she's got called Amoeba, I think. It's with the Danish piano player called Christian, and Carl is the guitarist, and Ole Moholo-Moholo, absolutely fantastic. And then the last set, or second last set that night, with Fred van Hove and Peter Brotsman, that was absolutely very emotional. Seeing Fred van Hove in, what shall I say, the mental state that he is in, 82 years old, not being able to speak or almost not walk, but still, the second he sat down by the piano, he began playing, and it was absolutely incredible music together with Peter.
Okay. Can you tell me how important silence is for you?
Yeah, I mean, you could use the cliche and say that there's no sound without silence, or the opposite, but I mean, silence is very much forgotten in society today, and in music as well, and it's needed, and it's nice to enjoy silence together as well. I think that's also a beautiful thing. It happens very seldom, the way things work today, or the way people are these days.
Do you have time to enjoy silence in your life?
I try to, but I come home and the record player is on right away. I buy a lot of records and come home with a whole bunch, especially if I've been in Brazil, and the record player is spinning all day long. Then again, the other day it was off all day long. So it depends. It depends. But of course, sitting outside the church where we just did the gig, and the only sound you hear is of the wind and the grass and some of the cows, that is absolutely fantastic. And no cell phones, no screen. And I think when sitting on the train coming up here, everyone's got their eyes on a screen doing absolutely nothing. Searching for something that's going to stimulate their brain, but it's not. And deal with your own thoughts or the view. So I wonder what's the brain capacity of people's brain is going to be, or the lack of capacity in about. Well, it's going to be a lot of capacity because it hasn't been used.
Yeah. Well, in general, when you play with someone maybe for the first time, so you don't know the person, you don't know the way things are going maybe, how do you orientate in such a setting?
Yeah, I mean,
how you do that?
Not so often am I invited to play with someone that I don't know of from before. Usually I have a feeling of who it is, what that musician is doing, what kind of music, where we can go. And I do like to sort of check out what so-and-so has done, maybe in a live situation, or I would use YouTube. I mean, YouTube is in a way a good resource for that. Also as a presenter of putting on shows in Oslo and whatnot, checking out different musicians. But I like it when the two meet, or three or whatever, and everyone is strong about who they are as an improviser, so that you meet on an equal level with just as much baggage each, and then see what happens together. And especially in these first time meetings, but I think in general as well, you should be allowed, or allow yourself to be, if that is impolite, doing the opposite of what the other is doing. You're still listening, but you chose to do something else, instead of having a conversation where you're both saying the same all the bloody time, which is not so interesting after a while.
So in our situation, it could be that I ask you, how do you listen to music, and you tell me a totally different story.
For example, or you have your way of listening to music, I have my way of listening to music. I could even put on a record with Derek Bailey and have that in the background. Or I would be listening very closely to some Brazilian dance music. Find the details in that music. But it depends the day of the week, so to speak.
Yeah, it sounds very interesting. I think when you are really doing this kind of passionately job like you do, you experience also life totally interesting, I think, because you are more close to very, very thin details maybe that other people might not see or hear, right?
I mean, the person who's working in the restaurant is not paying attention to the music, or doesn't know if there's sound or not. She will feel it after that day of work, because that person is going to be completely exhausted or completely wired because of these surroundings. But I think maybe most people aren't conscious about their sound environment, call it that. Just walking down the street, listening to whatever sounds there are, or nature, or the texture of the pavement. I don't know. There's a lot of things that surprises me about myself every now and then.
Yeah. Well, you have also your big band.
Yeah.
Can you tell me how you organize that, a big band? I mean, you don't conduct them, right?
I don't contact them.
You don't conduct them. You're not standing in front of them and...
conducting! No. Well...
how is this for you?
Not conducting, but I would be cueing certain things in the music, and I would be telling the other drummer to either get some more steam going, or maybe a little bit quiet, or straighten out the groove or whatever. But and there are some pieces where I want there to be conducting. So let's say there's one where the guy doing electronics, he has then got, by chance, it's LPs with paper stuck onto it with a sign of how to play. So he'll conduct the band. What is that? Oh yeah, the clock. So he'll conduct the band with cues, simple cues. But when I'm writing the music, I want it to be so simple so that they can focus on playing good, instead of focusing on not doing any mistakes. But I don't want it to be completely free improvised, and I don't want it to be way too strict, but I also want to play with, what should I say, what happens if I do this? What happens if I do that? What happens if so-and-so cues the next section? Is it possible to write a piece of music which can go different, specifically directions every time you play it? Because there was the option of going to A instead of, option of going to letter C, D instead of A or whatever. So I'm just trying to play around with, find different ways of what shall I say, creating sound together, organize sound, organize instruments on stage, ways of playing.
And spaces.
Yeah. And how can you do that together and then also play with and play against? There's now, I think we're 14 in the band, which means you can split it up into quite a few pairs, for example, or trios or quintets. You can play at the same time, you can do the opposites. There's a lot of possibilities, and I think it's up to your own imagination how far you can go within that.
Yeah. Okay, well, you're meeting many people all over the world, all the time. People you never met before, maybe you will never meet again. But you are embraced, hopefully with open arms, most of the times. How is that for you? And is this true?
Oh God. Well, first time we went to Ethiopia, and then I think day 2 or day 3 we were invited to Vatcher saxophone player, and I remember other, how do I say this, some other people that were already living in Ethiopia who were not Ethiopian and not musicians. They were sort of surprised and shocked at the fact that I'd been for dinner at Vatcher. And so I will admit that as a musician you're also privileged, because there's usually going to be a presenter taking care of you. There's usually, or hopefully sometimes, there's a musician in town that is going to take you out and introduce you and so to people or clubs or whatever, social life. And so you're just diving straight into the middle, the melting pot, or what's going on here and there. So usually, I would say I always want to. So then, of course, most times I'm lucky as well. And what shall I say? I want to be. I think I am usually generous, or invite whoever wants to home to my place, so I would serve them a meal. Mm-hmm. And usually that's the case wherever I go as well. And usually you're meeting the same kind of people. I mean, when Bush was re-elected in the US, you never saw any of them at the shows. The same goes for these days with Trump. I don't think there's many Trump supporters amongst the audience or the people that go to our shows. So you're kind of meeting the people with the same positive, open spirit, warm spirit, I would say. So that's mutual. So, of course, you meet people that dislike what you're doing or you as a person, and you've got to deal with that. If it's the taxi driver or the volunteer who doesn't care about giving you a hand. But okay, people are different, and you just got to accept that and improvise it with it there and then.
Well, you have this beautiful third name in your name, this Paal Nilsson-Love.
Yeah.
What does it mean, this love in your name?
What does it mean? What does it mean to you? No, I mean that's from my father's side of the family. He's English, so he's got the love, and my mum's got the Nilsson, so that became Nilsson-Love.
So it was not a artistic name.
No. It's a family name.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. Well, thank you very much for this very interesting
I hope
talk
so.
with
no,
you.
Thanks. No,
Very nice.
Nice questions.
And good luck with all your projects.
Thanks.
All of them.
That's good to hear. Yeah. There's a few.
Great.
All right. Thanks.
Thanks.
Okay.